Hi and welcome to the running channel. I'm Anna and today's video is all about the female menstrual cycle, but men, don't switch off. We hope that there's something in here for everyone. So if you run with us women, or even more importantly, if you're involved at coaching at any level, then this should be quite informative for you as well. So I'll be going through the different stages of the female menstrual cycle, when's best to train, when maybe it's best to ease back, the kinds of things that you should be eating to fuel your body during the different stages of the month, and a top tip to make training around your cycle super easy. So make sure you stay watching right to the end for that. First up though, if you're new here, please do hit subscribe and tap the bell icon so you get notified when we upload new videos all about running, which we do every week. If you've always suspected that running or working out might be a little bit tougher at certain stages of your cycle, then you would be right. And your body also needs different nutrients depending on what stage of your cycle you're in. But first of all, how much do you actually know about the basics? So the length of your menstrual cycle is calculated from the first day of your period until the day before the start of your next period. Now, a really easy way to keep track of which phase you're in and when is to track things like your symptoms and dates in an app like Garmin Connect, which lets you put in all of that data and will give you an idea of where you're at in each stage. So you can break down the stages of a woman's menstrual cycle in a number of different ways, but the way that we're going to stick to is the way that Garmin displays them, which is menstruation phase, the follicular phase, the ovulation phase, and the luteal phase. So a cycle length can depend on woman to woman, but typically it lasts between 28 and 29 days, although it can change over time as well. Now, there's no conclusive evidence that suggests that the menstruation phase of your cycle has any particular impact on your performance, but it goes without saying that if you lose a significant amount of blood in your period, then it is likely that your iron levels will fall, and therefore there's a danger you may become anemic, and that in turn would have an impact on your performance. Also be aware that during your menstruation phase, your immune system can become susceptible, and therefore you are more likely to pick up illnesses like the common cold or viruses. So plenty of rest and recovery is advised during this phase. That said, the maximum training benefit during this phase actually comes from the likes of strength training and HIIT. Try and eat plenty of foods that are rich in iron during this phase, so things like leafy green veg and red meat. And it's also worth bearing in mind that it's recommended that you eat these sources of iron alongside sources of vitamin C, which will help with the absorption. And finally, menstruation is an inflammatory phase of your cycle, so try eating foods that are rich in antioxidants and anti-inflammatories, as that will help to counteract any symptoms that you might have alongside it. If you are prone to eating high processed foods and also taking on a lot of caffeine during this time, then that can be counterproductive. The follicular phase also starts with day one of a woman's period, and it ends with ovulation. So during this time, your body will see a peak in its levels of estrogen. So because of this, it is important to focus on your carbohydrate intake, especially before any endurance events and also any kind of endurance training. And that's because your body is using carbohydrates as its primary source of energy during the follicular phase. You may also notice an increase in energy levels during the follicular phase, and that's down to the release of dopamine and serotonin. So you can make good use of this additional energy boost by scheduling in some harder sessions during the follicular phase. So think some tougher S&C work, or maybe even some intervals. Diet-wise, during the follicular phase, look to increase your intake of foods containing collagen, so things like jelly, and don't scrimp on vitamin C either. These things will help with muscle, tendon and ligament recovery. Ovulation is the release of a mature egg from the surface of the ovary. It happens mid-cycle and is roughly around 2 weeks out from menstruation. Now, you may be more prone to injury at this time of your cycle, and that's because of the rise in estrogen in your body, which in turn can make ligaments and tendons more lax and elastic and therefore slightly alter your biomechanics. Diet-wise, collagen again is important to focus on at this stage of your cycle. The luteal phase begins after ovulation, and if fertilization doesn't occur, it continues right through to menstruation. Now, during this phase of our cycle, our hormones are all over the place, and because of all the different changes in our hormones going on during the luteal phase, it means that our body finds it more difficult to access carbohydrates as a source of energy. Its primary source during this phase is fatty acids. So if you're going out for a long run, it's really key during this phase of your cycle to make sure that you're topping up your carbohydrates as you go, so that that source of energy is readily available. Now, in a small study done by St Mary's University, it found that during the luteal phase, some women did experience a rise in their core temperature during the luteal phase. Now, this isn't anything to stop you from going running. It might just mean that it does feel a little bit harder. If the weather is warmer, you may notice it more. And realistically, it's just a reminder to make sure that you hydrate properly, especially during this phase of your cycle. Diet-wise, during the luteal phase, there may be an increase in the breakdown of muscles, so make sure you fuel with plenty of proteins both before and after any sessions during this stage of your cycle. You may also find that your blood sugar levels are pretty unstable as well, which is what causes cravings. And then towards the end of this part of your cycle, as you get to the menstruation phase again, make sure you stock up on those anti-inflammatories and antioxidants again to try and stave off any of those terrible PMS symptoms. Both Paula Radcliffe and Joe Pavey have spoken openly in the media about their menstrual cycle affecting their training and their racing. In fact, Paula even broke the record at the Chicago Marathon in 2002 while suffering some pretty nasty period cramps in the last third of the race. Now, both have mentioned that they have been prescribed certain drugs that have helped to delay their period around racing, although it's not been specified exactly what. These drugs are available for athletes to take to delay or even stop your period from coming. Jessica Judd was given a particular drug at the 2013 World Championships to delay her period, but in fact, she ended up coming last in the 800-metre heats and said that she felt that it had had more of an effect on her hormones and had felt emotional and heavy-legged. She's even publicly said previously that being on her period can be the difference between coming first and coming last on any given day. British tennis player Heather Watson famously crashed out of the Australian Open in 2015, saying that she had girl problems. She said as well that there were 1 or 2 days every month where she did feel lightheaded and sometimes a bit weak. Although with the taboo around periods and the female menstruation cycle still ongoing, she's never specifically said that it was her period that was to blame. A study in 2020 looked at the female menstrual cycle's effect on sporting performance using the experiences of elite female rugby players. 15 of them took part in this study, and nearly all of them said that they had experienced menstrual cycle related symptoms. 2/3 of them also said that heavy bleeding whilst they were on their period had affected their performance. Now, surprisingly, this study claims to be the first of its kind looking at how the female menstrual cycle affects sporting performance. And so this goes to show that there needs to be more consideration given by doctors, coaches, and those working with athletes at a high level when it comes to training around their menstrual cycle. Losing your period, or the scientific name for it, amenorrhea, is not normal. In fact, it should serve as a warning that something isn't right, perhaps with your diet or overtraining. It's part of what's known as Red S, or relative energy deficiency in sport. It basically means that the amount of energy or calories going in isn't enough for your body to be able to carry out its normal functions. When you lose your period as a result of overtraining or because of a lack of energy coming from your diet, your metabolism slows right down, and because of this, your body stops ovulating in order to conserve energy so that it can keep your vital organs going. As well as this, your body needs energy in order to build muscle, and so if you haven't got that energy source available to build muscle, you may also experience muscle breakdown. It can also lead to things like osteoporosis and make you more prone to injury. Now, if you're concerned about any of the points that we've spoken about RED-S, you should consult a doctor. Being on your period doesn't mean that you need to stop exercising. In fact, there's evidence to suggest that the opposite is true. So in 2019, Strava conducted a survey of over 15,000 female athletes and found that 78% of them said that exercise actually helped to relieve the symptoms of muscle cramps and other symptoms associated with menstruating. Now, you probably won't feel like hitting a particularly hard session when you're on your period, and that is completely understandable. But even just going for a walk, doing some gentle running, yoga or swimming and getting your body moving helps to increase your blood circulation, which can then alleviate those cramping symptoms, can also alleviate any pressure you might feel on your lower back. Don't forget that exercising can really boost your mood, and that's a great thing to have in your armoury, especially when you're on your period. I'm sure some of you will agree. Sure, you might feel a little sluggish, and that's to be expected, but going and doing some exercise can really help boost those energy levels. And as well as the Strava survey of athletes, there's also a report that found that women who exercised regularly 3 times a week for 30 minutes over the course of 8 weeks experience less painful menstrual symptoms than those who didn't. So I said at the start there'd be a top tip at the end, and here it is. Keep a track of your symptoms and the dates of your period in an app like Garmin Connect. Being able to understand how your body reacts at different stages of your cycle is a really powerful tool in your training. After all, running isn't necessarily just about running. You need to be aware of the other things that are going on with your body at the same time. Went and did a session that sucked? Or maybe it was during your luteal phase and you were low on energy. So next month, if you try the same session again, maybe up the amount of carbohydrates that you have before the session and see if that makes a difference. There are loads of different ways that you can adapt what you're eating and how you're training to fit in with your body and your cycle. There's also a Connect IQ widget that you can download to your devices so that you can see your period tracking at a glance rather than having to access it through the app itself. Hopefully you found this video useful. Thank you so much for watching. We really do feel like this is an important subject to tackle, and we could have made this video double in length with the amount of information out there. If you've got any questions for us on anything that we've covered, please do leave them in the comments below, and also share your own stories of training around your menstrual cycle. We will see you next time on the Running Channel.